I'll wait for the first confirmation. All right. One technical aspect, because recently in my location, as Mohammed said, I'm currently in Poland, there's been problem with electricity. So if there's sudden rundown, just give me a few seconds. I'm prepared for another source of the internet. So I will quickly reconnect and I'll be back to you. Few things at the beginning, because I'm also passionate about brain and the whole way we learn, the whole science of learning. And that is the reason that I came up with these ideas, and I decided to make extended research onto needs analysis. And my first question, before I tell you even more, is what do you know about needs analysis? Is there an area that you investigated, or maybe is it the area that you've been practicing on? Let me know in the comments right now. Does it sound familiar in any way to you? Anyone who tried it? Let me tell you a few things, what exactly needs analysis is. Here, before we start, we get down to business, short agenda for today. So hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. And if any kind of questions, thoughts, reflections come to you, hopefully we'll have time to discuss. To begin with, what need analysis is an ongoing and systematic process. That's first. We needed to identify and evaluate training our learners, and why we can do it. We want to maximize learning effects, and we want to create safe educational environment. And we as teachers, by collecting background information, we can help understand needs of our learners, of our students. We can also identify potential obstacles, problems. We can think about preferred solutions and approaches. And as the whole package, we can create an inventory of the skills, concepts, ideas, and resources that will affect the whole process of learning. At the beginning, I would like you to think about language that you plan to learn or you've just started. Pick a kind of a type of language that you are considering, or maybe you just started, and keep that in mind, because today you will be partially teachers, educators, and at the same time you will be learners. So I want to make this session as interactive as it's possible. From my perspective, needs analysis plus language, i.e. knowledge analysis, is our recipe for modern approach in education. Why is that so? In this session, I will present some elements of cognitive neuroscience, psychology, neurobiology, science of learning, research, my own experience, peer observation and evaluation. And what is that? Just a few facts at the beginning. Recently, scientists have measured that amount of data that enter our brain in average per person per day is around 74 gigabytes. In average, of course. So it's like you watch 16 movies through TV, you are constantly talking on your phone, you look everything around, and let's remember, what does it mean that we process information? It's not only when we learn, not only is it to happen when we learn, but also when you go shopping, when you have to look around, when you search for product, when you cross the street, you process tons of information, and every year it is about 5% more than the previous year. Why I'm telling you this? Because needs analysis is extremely helpful because our brains are constantly changing, but not at the same time. When we think about the brain of our ancestor, for instance, let's say 500 years ago, 74 gigabytes of information would be what a highly educated person consumed in a lifetime. Through books, stories, other skills, and whole process of learning. So today, 74 per day. Back in then, 74 in a lifetime. And if we are bombarded all the time by such amount of information, we might get lost. We might lose our motivation, and you as learner, your students, you as a teacher, simply can find yourself in the situation when there are so many things happening around you that simply solutions, preferable solutions, are lost. Uh, because of needs analysis, we are also able to identify needs of your students, what they need. Every student comes with a certain prior knowledge. And now you think about the language that I ask you to choose, whether if it's only first session that you want to have, or maybe you already had certain classes. And let's all think about the quote and the concept that what we want is not always what we need. And as teachers, trainers, and educators, our mission is to find happy medium and conduct the sessions in the way that they fit and suit needs, desires, and goals of your students. I ask you about the language. I will be addressing it a few times. Because of needs analysis, we are able to identify prior knowledge. You as a student, when you go to your first class of your language class, you come into the course with certain knowledge, beliefs, attitude. Maybe this is the system of skills that you overheard, or maybe you saw on the internet. It doesn't matter, but you have some kind of package. And as you bring this knowledge to bear in the classroom, it will always influence how you filter and interpret what you learn. You can see it as a big picture, as a big puzzle. We have certain smaller components, and altogether they create our goal, i.e., our picture. What we know in terms of how we learn, in terms of psychology, is that prior knowledge is robust and accurate and might be activated at the appropriate time. And it can provide a strong foundation for you, just to connect what you previously learned and connect new components, because this is how we learn. We connect new pieces of information to everything we saw, observed, and learned previously. However, when your knowledge is insufficient for the task, maybe it's activated inappropriately, some missing components appear, the knowledge is inaccurate, it can interfere or even impede new learning. By Vygotsky and the part of his theory, we know that we connect what we learn to what we already know, and at the same time, we interpret incoming information. And that's why prior knowledge can help us or can hinder the learning. Now, when we think about the knowledge as well, today we're not going to dive deeper into that matter, but let me just present you briefly two examples of types of knowledge. We can think about declarative and procedural knowledge. What's that? Simply speaking, you as a student have declarative knowledge, you know facts and concepts, but don't know how and when to apply them. Simply speaking, you can know that we need to use articles in English, for instance, but you are not sure when exactly they should be used. Procedural knowledge, on the other hand, is the situation when you apply formulas to solve problems, but you are unable to explain logic, some patterns and principles underlying chosen solutions. So, for instance, you know that we use simple past tense, and you know that sometimes we say opened and sometimes we say I saw, but you are not sure why this rule occurs. So the question here is to make the balance of this knowledge. Can you justify or explain choices you made? Can your students say, okay, I said that because this is the rule, I know how it works, I can show you on different examples. And at the beginning of each course, when we conduct needs analysis, we are able to measure, we are able to find what your student already have and what's missing. Now, when you think about the language you chose, let me know in the chat box about few components that might help you when you start the course, and few components that might hinder the learning. So it might slow down the whole process. What would be your first shot? And that would be a moment for me to take a sip of water. What can help you with the language you chose? I see that some of you wrote, I would like to learn German, yeah, French, Japanese. Is there anything, okay, something that you listen to the language? If you did it before, it might be the prior knowledge that can help you if it's activated, if it's sufficient and appropriate. Mhm. How about something that can possibly hinder your learning? Some elements that might slow down the whole process of learning. For instance, I'll give you an example. Okay, time to practice what is learned or to learn through practice. Yes. For instance, when I chose Spanish as other language that I wanted to study, I found out that I heard and I read over the internet many ways to use the same word, and I didn't know that it's the same meaning, but simply because South American speaking countries use this word differently, I didn't know that in Europe, in Spain, this word has different usage. So at the beginning, it slowed my process. While we carry on, why needs analysis is so important, because it cannot be overstated. It creates emotional support. We only learn when we feel safe. Today, we're not going to dive deeper into Bloom's taxonomy, Maslow's hierarchy, but what I can tell you is because of how our brain works and our whole hormonal system, we know that when we feel safe, happy, we experience joy, we are more eager, we are yearn to learn something new, even if at the beginning it might bring certain difficulties. Your needs analysis is also a source of future feedback. We stated that it's an ongoing process. So at the very time you feel, you can get back to it and check what's done, what's missing, because maybe the course wasn't designed by you, or maybe it was designed by the director of studies, maybe someone paid for the course. And because of needs analysis altogether, you as a teacher, director of studies, and your learners, you can determine what to put in the course. Thinking about the balance, to what extent you will be using course book, to what extent you will be using authentic materials, to what extent you are going to mix all together. You can adapt new materials. And here, as yesterday, it was something that derived from few sessions. Students tend to tend to learn by memorizing, which not always is their fault. It's the ghost and the spirit of Industrial Revolution and its impact onto education. Sometimes students simply do not know that there are other ways. By needs analysis, you can cut into pieces the whole process of learning and decide about retrieval practice and spaced repetition, which are two few of the best tools and methods to activate your knowledge. We know about Ebbinghaus and forgetting curve. So that's the curve that naturally appears in every brain. So that's the process that naturally appears in every brain, i.e., how we learn, how we forget, because it's very natural for our brains that we have to forget some pieces of information that are no longer relevant. And by needs analysis, as you decide that you have 6 months or maybe 1 year to conduct the course and meet the goals, you are able to implement retrieval practice and spaced repetition in specific and beneficial moments with your learners. Another key factor is when you as a teacher, at the same, you as a learner, which I ask you to be today as well, if you don't know why specific problem happens, specific problem exists, you are in a high risk of creating solutions that are for non-training problems, i.e., you as a learner want to have this language in order to travel only. And your educator, your teacher proposed writing essay activity. And the question here is it the performance and is it the solution that will lead you to attain your goals? No, it is not. That's why without proper needs analysis, we run high risk of misinterpreting many factors. How we can conduct needs analysis. At the end of this session, I will show you and I will share a few ready to go and ready to use templates that I created. Bear in mind that they have to be adjusted. My niche and the levels students, clients I work with is English ESP, Business English, and B2 plus to C2 levels. That's why the way I organized these templates are specifically organized for these students. That's why you have to adjust to your own needs. How we conduct needs analysis, it's systematic. So you decide with your student, how often are you going to check what's done? And maybe in the middle of the course, some other goals come up. Because someone who pays for the course, for instance, if you run business English classes, might have this idea that we are going to, in general, improve our speaking. My employees should improve their speaking. But in the middle of the course, you get the notification that recently they are going to start new huge international project. In order to succeed, they need to communicate better and present and, for instance, create rapport. And look, you are in the middle, you prepared many things beforehand, and now you face the situation that you have to change. It's a collaborative process because it should meet common ground. So it should be a dialogue. It should be a communication with your students, director of studies, and simply someone who pays for the course. There might be parents of your students. Very often they have different ideas and desires and concepts onto what their kids should learn. And once you enter the classroom and you have even short session with kids and with your students, you see that you are not on the same page. Needs analysis, additionally, is context specific, so it should address a very specific situation. For instance, you want to pass certificate, or you simply want to improve your speaking, your language in general, in order to apply for a new job. So it's a very holistic approach, multi-perspective, and it's a kind of compromise as well. This is what I told you about business English classes. For instance, this is the situation that happened to me, that my idea onto what should be taught and acquired during the course was entirely different than my students' needs and entirely different than CEO that decided to organize the course. And there was a high need to sit down, collaborate, and simply find the best solution that will fit all needs. Closely, we will touch only a bit today the whole area of motivation, because once we conduct needs analysis, we can consider motivation as a crucial factor in our learning process, because the importance of motivation in context of learning cannot be overstated. It can be repeated thousands of times, and all the time it will be important. It won't fade away. As you as a student and you as a teacher, you enter, for instance, college, any kind of school, and step by step you gain greater autonomy over what, when, and how you, and basically what components you would love to learn. Your motivation plays a critical role in guiding these behaviors. And why? You have so many competing goals. Yeah, maybe you want to learn how to play the guitar. You want to learn a new language. You have to pass your exam. You have to learn how to drive. So many goals. And when we think about motivation, we can think about two important concepts that are central to understand it. The first is subjective value of goal. How you measure the goal, what do you think about it? And the second is expectancies or expectations for any kind of success, for successful attainment of your goal. We know that when it comes to motivation, we have intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And that's why this talk, even a short debate with your learners during needs analysis, is so helpful, because you can evaluate to what extent they represent and they have extrinsic motivation. Is it extrinsic motivation, as we know, that arise from outside of your learner? On the contrary, intrinsic motivation arises from within. Simply speaking, if you have extrinsic motivation for learning the language I ask you to choose, you are motivated to perform, to learn this language just to get a reward, or maybe to be the best in the city, in the classroom, or maybe to avoid any kind of punishment. If your motivation is intrinsic, you just perform, you learn because you like it. And maybe it's your personal reward. You experience certain moment of joy, happiness, fulfillment, and overall, you feel good about it, that you learned something new. Once you know what's the percentage, what's the weight of your students' motivation, you are able to decide certain approaches. You are able to think about certain components. When we think about the goals, to say that someone is motivated tells us very little unless you say what this person is motivated to do. And here again, we get back to this idea of what we need is very often different to what we want. So when you consider the way your student's goals influence learning, it's worth noting that students' goals for themselves might differ from goals for them, for ideas you chose for them. And this dialogue here during needs analysis is highly important. I don't know, have you ever had this situation that a student entered your classroom or a course and said, I'm extremely good at speaking, but I need to practice writing because my boss asked me to do. And then after a few sessions, you see that this is not the situation that I was presented at the beginning. There are some lacks, issues, and missing components of speaking. So this communication with your learner is crucial to explain and not steal and break the whole motivation. When we think about the value, the issue here is quite simple. You as a learner, you are motivated to engage, take part in behaviors to get your goals that have a high value. Thus, when you confront with multiple goals, such as examples I told you, going to another session, learning how to play guitar and so on, and you know the value, which one is more important at this very moment of your life, you are more motivated to pursue this goal. And few things in terms of expectancies, you as a learner, people in general are motivated to pursue goals and outcomes that they believe that they can successfully achieve. So at the beginning, if we don't conduct needs analysis, language experience, language analysis, and we just put on the table certain pieces of book, certain activities, and we overwhelm our students with, they might get the feeling that, no hell, I'm going to succeed in that. And we create big issue at the very start. Now, as it's time for my break a bit, it's time for your brainstorming. What personal factors that you see here and what personal factors that come to your mind might be the factors that work for you in this learning journey that I ask you about? How you are going to use this language? In what kind of environment you would like to use it? What time you need, or maybe what time you give yourself to learn this language? What character you as a learner have? Are you extremely open-minded and you are not afraid to ask tons of questions, dive into internet forums and contact any other teachers, professionals, and learners? Or maybe you are more reserved and shy and you need some emotional support. As you know, there is a huge difference between teaching, between learning face-to-face, online, which partly I disagree with, because we can make more than we think to create this online environment even better. Although there is a difference in the way we process information, whether we have individual classes or maybe group ones. I decided to put one of my favorite ideas here, that every sky is different. So your student is different, you are different, and even you created the course on the same level that simply at the beginning might fit all needs. Every student is different, and their goals are like onions. They have different layers. That's why we need to investigate them. These are some ideas that came to me during last 10 years of learning and teaching. And I'll give you 30 seconds because I cannot give you more because of we don't have so much time, but I'll give you 30 seconds. What other factors of motivation would you put for yourself or for the learners that you recently started working with? What would be your motivation? Let me know in the comments. Is it this desire to have a certificate and put it on the wall? Or maybe you just want to know more about the culture. Intellectual growth, self-development. Yes, why not? Learning per se. Promotions. Yes, job promotion. Look, here we have the factor that maybe it's worth putting more emphasis onto business English, for instance, not on the general English. Gaining knowledge as a motivation just means, yes, of course, there are some nerds and geeks that they just want to learn. That's it. Business related. When we think about time, look how different it sounds when we say, I want to learn German. I want to learn Spanish. Goals should be cut into smaller pieces as well. Look how different it sounds when we say, by the end of 2023, I will be able to introduce myself, say something about my family, friends, and hobbies in Japanese. And here again, we get back to regularity, not quantity, and space repetition, the science of learning. Here, shortly speaking, how you can talk with your students, with your clients about goals. We can think about ultimate goal, some specific steps that should be taken in order to achieve it, and creating a short list of short-term goals that will suit, fit, and help you to succeed. We do not have time to have this part as a more workshop mode, but all presentation will be available for you so you can get back to it and do this analysis on your own for the language you chose. Not having this fear of changing goals is a crucial component because they might change over the time. They might change because you as an educator spotted that something's not working. We should change the approach. Maybe it's worth introducing another method. Maybe we should introduce and focus on different systems, different sub-skills in language. That's why it's totally okay for you as a learner and as a teacher to say, we have to stop, we have to press pause, reflect on what we've already achieved, and ask ourselves question, are we on the same path? Are we still on the same path? Because falling is part of the process, and errors, mistakes are gate to neuroplasticity. Without them, we are unable to learn. We are unable to help our brains simply to be better, to improve. What I do with my students is at the beginning, I always create written contract. Why? Because when we just speak about it, it's a sort of decision that they might be afraid of after some time, or simply they might forget because of the amount of information they process. On the other hand, when you write something down, it serves as a sort of obligation. So before the course, we check some habits, we check ideas, what your students love, because it's always better to read and learn, for instance, about crime stories that you love instead of politics. You will have more motivation to get your goal and to be better speaker. I create a certain list of skills and sub-skills systems that we should cover. We think all together about the demand, what we should cover at the beginning, and what can be a later part of the process. And in this interview and these forms that I will share with you in a while, I always ask questions, but I try to ask as many open questions, not only yes or no, evaluate, have you been learning English previously, yes or no, because open questions give us more and we are able to meet the common ground. Forms and templates, this is something that I said at the beginning and I promise I will share with you, so we will skip this part. And before I ask you about the biggest takeaway, because wow, I'm super shocked that I was able to manage it before the time. So it's good that I have time to show you Gunsight. And by Gunsight, I mean the tool that I created at the beginning for you as a teacher and you as a learner. So simply you can have 2 copies of these. A second for me as I will adjust it for you to see it even better. All right. And 2 copies of these, you mark your thoughts from 1 to 10, what at the beginning of the course you see, and your student does the same, because after some time and your written contract, you can get back to this needs analysis and language analysis and reflect together what has changed, what still need to be worked on, and so on. So that's one of my solution for you. And as I said, it's not designed for A1, H students, as I don't work with such levels, but I'm sure you as educators are so creative, full of concepts, knowledge, experience, and amazing ideas that you will know how to adjust it to your students' needs. That's first. And the second thing, what I also do, of course, it doesn't happen at the first session. Yes, sometimes it's like a pre-first session question that I sent this template. Have a look. And 4 categories that we have here. As we know, when we feel happy, when we are motivated to learn and we love what we learn, we can point out what you like, for instance, reading in the chosen language, what you already read so far, never done, and your dreams and desires. This is a template that works perfectly for B2 plus levels and the students that want to bridge the gap and hop onto C1 and C2 level. So as you see, the examples on the right side are specifically designed for these levels. So you can just make it easier and adjust appropriately to your learners. And that's it. And I'm very happy that we have a few minutes, as far as I'm not wrong, to your questions and maybe some reflections. Maybe there's something that you would like to ask, or you already have some idea and your needs analysis might be done differently. So we have some time. So let me know in the chat box.